Hi guys, this is Amin. Welcome to our 7th episode. Today we're going to be talking about the brown come-up and what desi representation in mainstream media means for generations of brown kids living abroad. So, first question I want to ask you guys is, who were the most prominent desi figures in American media? Let's go with that for now. When you were growing up.
I remember flipping through the TV channels back in the day and seeing Mindy Kaling on The Office for the first time. And it was that episode where they were celebrating Diwali. And I'm like, excuse me, what do you mean? You're talking in English and you're in America and you're showing me this.
I remember that episode.
Yeah, it was so weird. And that was before I became obsessed with The Office, that I saw her like that.
Yeah. I remember I didn't like the fact that Michael hated Indian food.
Yeah.
I felt personally offended.
I feel whenever someone doesn't like it, I'm always inside I'm a little hurt. I'm like, oh, I grew up with that.
Exactly. How can you not like the food I eat? Come on.
Yeah. I remember seeing The Office when I was in middle school. What about you guys? Because I'm kind of younger than you.
I mean, I never really actually sat down and watched The Office all the way through. So The Office I didn't get into later on. And I wouldn't even say I got into it.
Is Mindy Kaling the first one that you saw as well?
No, Mindy wasn't the first one I saw. I didn't really even see anyone that was desi when I grew up.
Yeah. To
be honest.
For me, it would be Mindy Kaling, and then probably I talked about this on one of the last episodes. It was Jay Sean when his song "Down" came out. Yeah. That was really cool because he was Punjabi, and all these white girls in my school loved his song, so it was just such a weird moment. And then, yeah, I don't think I had any other figures. I did read a couple of books, there was one called Born Confused, which was about kind of an Indian American girl going through high school, and I got a kind of representation from that, but that's it.
I totally forgot about Jay Sean. He was so big for a minute, and then I remember Heartbreak became obsessed with this album, and then I became obsessed with this album. Oh my god.
Yeah, Jay Sean was later on high school.
Yeah, he was high school for me too.
So I don't consider my high school growing up when I was little to now. I don't know. So I just mainly didn't really have anyone that was just oh, they're Indian. That's so cool, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of sucked, right?
Yeah.
I feel I never thought about us not having representation in Western media because the amount of Bollywood movies and TV shows that we watched, I never felt there was a lack of representation until I became older and realized, oh, in Hollywood it's all white people.
Yeah, so that was one thing I was gonna ask. Do you think that because we didn't have any representation really in American media, we kind of were more interested in Bollywood for that reason?
I think so. Bollywood, they're actually dominating the whole movie industry every single year. They come out with so many movies, and so I think that's why we got so into it. And yeah, our parents would watch Bollywood movies, but I think that Bollywood honestly is topping Hollywood right now. That's my opinion.
Do you remember your first Bollywood movie that you watched?
All I remember is growing up, elementary school, anytime we'd go to Amin's house, Amin and I would always watch a Bollywood movie that she was really into at the moment.
Really?
Yeah, and that's how I watched a lot of the classics, were with you, because on my own I wouldn't watch Bollywood movies.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I was obsessed with them, because I was just wanting to see someone that looked like me on the screen.
Yeah.
The first Bollywood movie I ever watched that I have memories of is Kuch Kuch Hota Hai.
Mm-hmm. That was the first movie I downloaded. The first one that I remember that we all kind of watched together like we even like went to bed at like 12, which was like crazy when I was little, was Mehuna, and Amrit had it on his laptop and he like hooked it up to the TV, and it was my parents and my brother. I don't know if you were there, Harpreet, but that was really the first one I remember.
Yeah, Mehuna. And then I remember another one, Tere Naam, with
Yeah.
Salman Khan. That was so sad. Oh my god. Anyway.
Yeah. I remember watching the ending of that. That was really sad.
Oh, you know what? I don't remember like specific one that I watched first, but do you guys remember when we took Bhangra class? Your car had like those little DVD players in it, and we would always watch like a different Bollywood movie every time we'd like go to practice and then come back.
Dad's car, like
Yeah.
the Honda, yeah.
Yeah.
That was so fun.
Oh my God.
We used to wake up early on Saturdays and drive an hour into Boston just to do some. It wasn't even like a Bhangra class. It was like called a Bhangra like workout session.
Our parents paid a ridiculous amount of money to like teach us, and then after this was over, like Aman and Harpreet were the only ones who kept on like dancing. The rest of us were like, okay, torture is over.
Well, it was kind of cool. It was through Boston Bhangra.
Yeah, I did enjoy when we came back. We went to the restaurant, and they always had like fresh naan and like sabji waiting for us to eat at like a really long table.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I guess, why do you think representation is important? So with the release of Crazy Rich Asians, what kind of become a headline was how important representation was for the people who could see themselves on the screen for the first time. So why do you think that's important?
I honestly think representation like always matters. I'm always going to say that. Like having to see someone that looks like you on a screen and like looking up to them is pretty important when you grow up. Like I said before, I didn't have anyone that I looked up to that was like desi or Indian that was on in movies in Hollywood or anything like that. And so I grew up watching all white like actors and actresses. And so as I grew up and Bollywood became a thing, I really appreciated seeing someone that was brown and that would connect with me pretty easily. And so I think that's one thing that's really important with representation.
Yeah, I agree with what Harpreet's saying, especially about connection. If you don't have someone that you see on the big screen that looks like you in like your media or your language, you don't feel like you're seen as much, and you don't feel like your culture is being shown to the other people. Like we were shown like white culture and stuff like that, and like we learned about their culture, but being able to see like our culture, like that Office episode, it was like kind of cool that like my friends got to see that, and that's like a little bit of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was looking up articles before the episode, and basically it was just a matter of importance. Like if you see yourself on the screen, then you're kind of thinking, oh, I am important enough to be represented like that, right? So I would agree with that. It's kind of interesting, like how we grew up, we had to see so many basically white people in the media, and we also lived in a really white town. But people who identify with that race, like white people, they didn't have that kind of, oh, I'm not represented. So it'd just be interesting to feel how they feel, to be like mainstream. And I think going back to last episode, this is where like that ABCD identity crisis comes in, because people from India, they also have their representation, but especially for us, like we don't have that growing up in America, brown person representation, or at least we didn't growing up.
Yeah, I feel like we're called like the melting pot, but we have like the least amount of like diversity shown. Because even like when I went abroad, they had like posters of like different races and stuff, and if you went to like a different part of the city, like I don't remember what part of the city I went to, but there were signs in Punjabi and Hindi with English subtitles as well, and I don't feel like we have that here.
Yeah. So now it's been a couple of years. We've all grown up. We've finished high school and college. Who are your favorite desi figures that are popular in the media today?
I definitely love Mindy. Like I've grown to really appreciate Mindy. When people would say Mindy around me before and I didn't watch The Office, I was just like, who is this Mindy person? Like I never looked up the name, Googled the name to see a picture. I was like, who is this Mindy? And then I realized that she's Indian and she's like dominating Hollywood. And I really appreciate that. And then another person that I really, really love, Amin's probably gonna touch upon this, but Hassan Minaj is like amazing. And then Lily Singh is another person that's really has been out there. I think she sometimes I don't think she gets enough credit for the representation that she puts out there for us. Yeah, there's some things that she does talk about that we may not agree or connect with, but I think that she's another really big figure that has been in Canada and in the US that we can kind of look up to because she's actually Punjabi as well.
Yeah. I would say Mindy Kaling. You both know how obsessed I am with her. She's literally my hero. And then touching on like the Lily Singh thing, I remember in high school when YouTube was like kind of a big thing. Some of my friends came up to me and they were like, "Have you seen this YouTuber, Lily Singh? She's Indian like you." And at that point, like I wasn't like into YouTube, so I never like really watched her. But when I started watching her, I was like, "Oh shit, like this girl is so cool." And the fact that like my white friends brought her to my attention, I was like, "Damn." And then also like Liza Koshy, I
Yes.
feel like, yeah, she's done a lot to help with like the whole representation thing. She's super, I feel like people like Lily Singh and Liza Koshy, because they're social media stars, they have more of like an outreach versus the Hollywood people that we see, or even like the Bollywood people. They don't like completely touch on what we've dealt with growing up. Like seeing Lily's videos about how she was like treated as being like an immigrant and stuff, it was kind of like, oh, that's us.
Yeah, I feel like I relate to these people more when they do bring up things that are relevant to us. So obviously I love Hassan Minaj. He's my absolute favorite. And he says things that are very Indian and he sometimes doesn't explain them, and that's really cool because sometimes your culture doesn't need to always be explained. Like he'll just drop random desi terminology. And I think for Lily Singh and Minju Kaling, I definitely related more to them when they did do kind of brown work. So Lily did that more early on, so then I was more into her videos then. And Mindy recently did a huge project with Never Have I Ever. So I definitely relate to them more when they do stuff like that, but it is nice to see them in general in mainstream media.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How do you feel like controversy affects the importance of representation? Like the whole Aziz Ansari thing that happened a couple of years ago.
That's hard because we have so few figures that represent us, but the Aziz Ansari controversy specifically is really complicated because it's almost a non-controversy. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I feel like it's just annoying when a person of color gets into a controversy because that controversy becomes way bigger than if like a white person had a controversy, like that gets brushed under the rug.
Yeah, I feel that once a person of color, like BIPOC person, is going through like some sort of controversy, I feel like we're hit the hardest and we're judged more, especially in the media. And when it comes to someone that is white, they're just like, oh, they did this, they made these many movies, or they made this many songs, so like something positive comes out of it. And I just feel like a lot of negativity goes towards like brown and black and like all those people when it comes to like people of color.
I feel like when a person of color gets in controversy or like in trouble, they unfortunately represent their whole people. Like Aziz Ansari getting in trouble, that was just like a downward spiral on like the Indian community. But
Yeah,
if like a white person got in trouble, that would just be on them. It wouldn't be on their whole like white people. It wouldn't be, yeah.
well, Hasan Minhaj describes it as being a mouthpiece for your culture.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's
So,
annoying.
like, getting into the controversy with Aziz specifically, for me personally, I understand what was happening with the Me Too movement, but I think that was kind of the point where the movement kind of started maybe going a little bit too far, because I took the story that was told about Aziz and I just kind of thought it was a bad date.
Yeah, I honestly, when there were sexual assault allegations or sexual harassment allegations towards Aziz, the only story that I was getting was it was just a bad date, and that's all.
Oh, I actually read an article and pretty much stated that this girl like told this story about Aziz after he like won like an Emmy for Masters of None. She felt like because he had like a Me Too pin on, I guess, in his acceptance speech, she was like, oh, I'm gonna like go forth with my story. Long story short, a couple months later, she came out again stating that it was just a bad date and that he didn't actually sexually assault her.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of too bad because I feel like stories like that undermine the importance of the movement as a whole.
Yeah. So on to the next thing. What do you guys feel about like the whole push of diversity in Hollywood? Like the huge projects coming out, Crazy Rich Asians, Homecoming King, Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj, Never Have I Ever with Mindy Kaling, and like all the other desi representation.
I love it. Honestly, like we've been talking about, representation is so important, and it's really, really, really cool to see all of these brown creators, and I just can't imagine how lucky someone growing up is to have this from the beginning. If I had a show like Never Have I Ever when I was in middle school or high school, it would have meant like everything. And like I said, it just makes you think like people who constantly have this representation and they take it for granted, what must their like experience be like? Because it's probably nothing like ours was.
Yeah, I think it's cool that like, I don't know, my friends are getting more into it and they're learning more about my culture, but at the same time, it's not hard to distinguish Hindi culture from like Punjabi culture. So I feel like they should like state it more that this is Hindi culture versus like this is Punjabi culture. I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Jaspreet. I was gonna make the point of like I really would like to see something that comes out that's like a Punjabi family.
Ooh,
Like a Punjabi Sikh family out there. Like I really want to see that.
I actually have an example. Bend It Like Beckham. Oh, that was back in the day. It had yeah, they were Punjabi.
Yeah.
That was an awesome movie. Yeah.
It's really good.
But I feel like ever since that came out, and that was like a movie that was like I don't know if it was a Bollywood movie or a Hollywood movie, but like that one, people like in the US and in India were watching.
I think it was neither. Wasn't it filmed in England?
Yeah, but I think it was a Hollywood. I'll look it up. But I think it was a Hollywood movie just because it was called Bend It Like Beckham.
But yeah, like ever since then, like I have yet to see something that represents like Punjabi culture. You know?
I think it was a UK movie. I don't know. Under country it says US, UK, Germany. But it was written by an Indian woman. I don't know. I remember watching it recently and it brought back a lot of memories because like I was there like a year ago and being like, oh my god, this is where Bend It Like Beckham was shot.
That's so cool.
I was like, I went there. I don't know.
All right, so for today's segment, I was thinking we could talk about what our favorite Bollywood movie or movies are. So whoever wants to go first.
So my favorite movie is Jab We Met. It's the one movie I will keep on watching over and over and over again, and I'm absolutely obsessed with Kareena Kapoor. And I don't know how to say the guy's name.
Shahid Kapoor.
Yeah, Shahid Kapoor. Shahid Kapoor was like my celebrity crush for so long, but then
Me
this
too.
asshole got married, and I was like, great, there goes my shot.
Yo, he got married really late, Jess.
He was so hot. And then he had this other movie where the main character was an architect, and I'm like, okay, just like, please just marry me. Like,
I love Shahid Kapoor. I've loved him since watching Viva.
he's just everything. He's everything.
I really love the classic Bollywood movies, like not our parents' classic, but Kuch Kuch Hota Hai is one. Tere Naam, I will watch it over and over again. I haven't watched it in a while. Maybe I'll watch it tonight. But I really like, what else? I don't know. I mean, what do you like?
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that. I really like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum. I watched that so many times, and my favorite when I was younger was Mujhse Dosti Karogi, which is such a bad movie. Like, it's the acting in it is awful, but I really loved it growing up. And then for like current Bollywood movies, I don't think I have like a favorite, but I do like movies like Queen was really good, and what other current movies?
Oh, I really like Dangal a lot because it had
Ooh.
such a great message
Yeah.
for like women, and so
Just right, you watched that with my parents and me, right?
Yeah, and there's like a beginning scene where they're all like naked and they're like slapping their fat, and I'm like sitting next to your dad, like, what am I watching?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Wait,
We were
I have
in
a
the
question.
movie theater for hours.
Yeah, but we got the whole movie theater to ourselves, which is cool. I actually have a question. That movie that you were talking about, Minna Doste,
Mujhse dosti karogi.
is that the movie where the guy is friends with one girl, but then like they're like texting for like this other girl?
Yeah, it's like a catfish movie.
Okay, wait, no, stop. That was the first movie I like ever watched, because I have a distinct memory of like your house, and then we're sitting in like that first living room and we're watching it, and he's like texting I don't know, a prophet, like this distinct memory.
I know, I watched it so many times.
Yeah.
But the music was awesome. I love Hrithik Roshan. He's amazing.
I'm just thinking about the movies. A lot of them have such shitty storylines, but they're so good.
Yeah.
yeah, like Bollywood movies, they have to have a certain amount of like music video type of things in it, and they're not musicals. They just have to have a certain amount.
Literally, I would love to see one Bollywood movie with no music. Like, please.
I want to be Bollywood then.
I feel like that's like one reason I don't watch them, because I know half of like the movie is gonna be like music.
Oh, another current movie I really like is Ye Jawani Hai Diwani. It's really good.
Haven't watched that.
It has Ranbir Kapoor and Deepika Padukone.
I have a question. So obviously, like, there's a lot of brown come up, but what do you guys feel about Indian people kind of downgrading some of the people that we see in Hollywood now, like the brown people, being like, yeah, they're Indian, but they're not as good as they could be, or something like that?
You're gonna have to explain that again.
Okay, so I was watching TikTok, and there was a lot of these videos where they would have like Priyanka Chopra, Mindy Kaling, Deepika, and a couple other like Indian actors, and the captions would be like a picture of Mindy Kaling, and it would be like white man's like brown something, and then there would be like a picture of like Priyanka being like sell out, and then there would be like another caption under another Bollywood actress saying something negative. White man's whore. That's what was written under Mindy Kaling.
Are these just bashing Indian actresses in general.
Yeah, and it's from Indian people.
I mean, there's always going to be like hate, and Priyanka Chopra has had controversy, so I kind of understand some of the hate for her. But yeah, if you have fans, you also have haters. It's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to talk about was like, I feel that when Indian actors or actresses come into Hollywood, they have to dumb down the way they act and the way they are with their like white counterparts. I don't know if you've observed this, but like if you see them in Bollywood, they're a certain way, but when they come to Hollywood, they change the way they are completely.
Are you talking about Deepika Padukone's awkward Ellen interview?
That interview is trash.
I didn't see it yet.
It's so bad.
But I don't know, like, have you all felt that way? Like they just dumbed themselves down just because they're in the Hollywood industry now?
I wouldn't say they dumb themselves down, but maybe because they're in like an industry that doesn't understand their culture, they have to be more aware of how they're sounding and what they're saying.
Well, there's also a line that Sofia Vergara says in Modern Family. She's like, "So I'm so smart in my language, you don't even know." So
Yes.
there's also like that like language gap that
Yeah.
they're not able to express themselves as intelligently. Like I definitely couldn't express myself very intelligently in Hindi, and I might barely be able to get by in Punjabi. So that might be playing a role, but I can kind of see where you're going with. We haven't watched it, but the Deepika Padukone Ellen interview was just very bad PR.
Also, I feel like them coming from Bollywood to Hollywood, they're like the first representations people in the Western world have seen. So they're put at like a higher pedestal. So they might be acting differently, but it's because they have to, because they're the first coming over and they have to educate everyone in the Western world.
Yeah, I just think they're forced to dumb down and not be their authentic self when they cross over to Hollywood.
Well, then they also have to answer stupid questions like, why do you still live with your family even though you're an adult? Just questions like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like people need to put more respect on Mindy Kaling's name. Yeah, she just came out with Never Have I Ever, but the amount of shit she's done beforehand, then there's just people calling her a white man's whore. I'm like, she had The Office, she wrote like the entire backstory. She was like one of the only people of color, or the only woman of color on that whole show. Also, she did the Mindy Project, where it was pretty much like an autobiography of her life that she did. And so what, she likes white men. That doesn't matter.
Mindy is awesome. We get it. Jaspreet.
And just people need to put more respect on her name. She was alone. She's from fucking Boston. Like, she reps.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That wraps up our episode for today. So now I'm going to give it to Jaspreet, who's going to let you know what we're going to talk about next week.
So next week, we're going to be talking about when we want to move away, the pressures of staying home, and what we want in the future. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Peace out.